Hello,
Yeah,
listen, don't even let this Courtney girl off the hook. What is a surprise?
Okay, are you ready for the surprise?
Yes.
Catherine, you probably don't even know about this.
No.
This woman who runs this tour company approached me and she said, I found your blog and I was wondering if you would be willing to do a tour in Scotland with you as the draw. Anyway, so we talked it over and I said, if I can bring my BTS lasses, I would be all down for that.
Mm-hmm.
So we have been working on setting up a tour, and it would be the four of us and 30 or 40 of our closest patron followers. And basically spending a week, it's 8 days in Scotland, history, filming locations with some other surprises, prime tours out of Dublin, Ohio.
Okay.
Oh,
So she did
interesting.
this. She did this with Outlander Purgatory. She does.
I'm in.
She does these.
You don't have to twist my arm.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like,
Yeah.
a no-brainer.
There's a castle stay. I've been putting this trip together with her. I thought it sounded like fun. Now we're talking September 2023.
Oh, 2023.
Okay.
Goodness, 2023.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know.
Yeah.
It
If
takes
I'm
that
still
long.
here, I will go.
It takes that long to plan it all and get
be
it all going. So
I'll
Mhm.
be 81 by that
And then,
time.
of course, getting people to attend.
Just it's September. Scotland is cold and rainy.
no, it's not. It's
We
still
go in June.
It's still really nice in September.
It is. I've been in October and it was still pretty decent in
Yeah.
October.
No, it's really nice in September. Are
As
you worried about the
long
weather?
As we're not flying Spirit.
June in Scotland is freezing and wet.
Yeah,
I can attest to that because I've been there then too. But I think September is
early
probably
fall
a pretty
is-
decent
It's
time to go.
beautiful. And she recommended that time frame based on like availability of stuff that's still open, weather,
Okay.
she's been doing
Of
tours
course.
to Scotland for a long time.
Of course, I'm in. A trip
course
with
you
y'all.
are.
I am in, like Flynn.
What do you think, Catherine?
As long as I'm
I think it's a
I'm
great
alive
idea.
and kicking.
And that's more than enough time to plan and, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it would be a blast.
Yeah,
Yeah,
oh,
I think
gosh.
so too.
I mean, the four of us together are a blast.
Exactly.
the
Watch
get-go.
out. Well, Antoinette, didn't you have a trip planned? And it's like, how many people are going to go?
did.
8?
We have
Yeah.
to cancel it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so those 5 ladies who are going to come with me, I know they'll come to this thing.
Yeah. Only like
As long as
3,
they don't
but-
expect me to eat haggis, I'm good.
Actually, I had some good food in Scotland. I never had haggis there.
They have
but I
great
had
food, I think.
I had some really, really good food there.
All right. Tonight, we are talking about episode 601, Echoes, written by Matt Roberts, directed by Kate Cheeseman. I'm Courtney Williams. I have been a book fan since 2006. My mom introduced me to the books. I've been a show fan since the beginning of the show. And I produce this blog, Outlander Behind the Scenes. And one of the things that I do is this host this discussion with these lovely ladies who have become my dear, close, wonderful sister friends. Yeah.
I'm drinking white sangria out of my fancy glass. Cheers.
Cheers.
Lynette. I covered Outlander in season 2 after passing it on my TV several times and saying, what the hell is this? And then one day I decided to watch it and I was hooked. And then I discovered the books after. So I came to the books after the show because I was so intrigued by the characters. When I realized it was based on a book series, I wanted to read the books. So I've read all the books too many times to talk about. And I finally finally, after 5 seasons, I'm seeing and understanding and accepting that the books and the TV show are two separate and distinct entities.
Mm.
And I have stopped conflating them. So, Sandy.
Yes.
My name is Carmen Schmidt, and I write the Outlander Anatomy blog, and I've been a fan since 2013. My daughter and daughter-in-law simultaneously pressured me to start reading the books, and I resisted, but finally gave in, and I was hooked on about page 10. I am drinking sparkling wine, my favorite tonight, and it is a German sparkling wine from the Rhine, and it's very good.
And we have Kathy
Oh gosh, I
tonight.
missed this. Yes, hi, I'm back. I'm Kathy Harmon,
I'm
and I
sorry.
am also a member of Blacklanders, which it's a convos and writing. And I am not a book purist, even though I've read all the books. And I have watched all the episodes of the show, and I've never combined them. I just find them always separate, and I enjoy them both separately and very much. And I enjoy my sister girls as well.
I'm drinking electrolytes
Oh,
and water.
Ugh.
yeah, I'm drinking tea.
See,
You
I know
girls,
you two are the
Y'all are so
partiers.
boring.
we're the partiers, we're
Well-
the decadent
Well, I
ones.
think
I saw this
Sorry.
episode first as part of the virtual premiere, and I was wowed by it. I immediately wanted to rewatch it, but you couldn't do that. I couldn't even rewind. It was like one watch, you're done. And I just thought it was a fantastic introduction to season 6. I was blown away by Mark Lewis Jones. That was one of the biggest impressions. The way that man fills the screen is just amazing to me. And yeah, so I loved it.
Okay. I loved it. I didn't watch it at midnight because I don't have the Stars app, so I had to wait until 9 on Sunday when it came out. And so I had to stay off Twitter to avoid all the spoilers. And damn, it was such good TV. I really, really loved it, especially when I think of all the stuff I've had to endure on TV over the past years, because there's some real rubbish out there. And seeing the episode just reminded me of how good the show really is. You know, the standard of the acting, the production values, everything. Mark Lewis Jones, I saw him first in a Welsh drama called Keeping the Faith. So when I heard that he was cast as Tom Christie, I said, oh yes, we are in for something, because he is excellent. And I love everything about everything that Tom Christie did. I love the episode. I thought it was great.
I thought this was a terrific episode, especially for the first one. You know, each season we've had a 101 and so on and so forth. And I thought this one kept up the standard. I thought that there was an awfully lot of information that was delivered to the audience in a pretty effective manner, that it condensed a lot of the book. In fact, 2 books, because there were parts from the Fiery Cross that was in this episode. So while they took some from A Breath of Snow and Ashes and moved it into season 5, they took some of season 5 and moved it into season 6. I noticed in it. And so I thought that the Ardsmuir backstory was really a good idea. I thought it was really well done. And I thought that it was important to tell the background for the conflict, which is obvious to anybody with 2 eyes, which is going to occur between Tom Christie and Jamie. It's just begging for a lot of conflict in the future. So I would give it a very excellent grade.
I enjoyed it mainly because for anyone who, like me, has not been watching the old episodes through Outlander, I needed that recap. I felt like it was as exciting as watching the first one with Claire's voiceover, and so it didn't seem like a what they call it. It didn't feel like a recap actually because we had the voiceover, so it was part of the episode rather than the part that everyone usually skips over. And so I really thought it overall. I just thought it was very well done. It was very intelligently done. There was nothing where I felt frustrated saying, "Okay, let's go, let's get moving." It was just nicely paced, nicely done. Overall, a nice introduction to a season. And if this is where we're starting, the rest of the season is going to be phenomenal.
Well, let's jump in. Let's do favorite scenes. Antoinette.
Hold on.
Do we want-
I actually have a little book. I wrote stuff
Oh
down
my
in.
goodness.
My top favorite scene is, it's a weird one. It's the dinner scene with the governor and Jamie and Tom Christie. I thought that interplay between the three of them was just fantastic. And I loved how the governor laid the food out and you could see Tom Christie just wanting to dive in. His little face, I felt so sorry for him. And Jamie was trying to be stoic, even though it was little scraps on his plate. But I said to myself, that's probably more food than he has seen in weeks or months. I just thought that was just so clever. It set up that whole push and pull and that power struggle between Jamie and Tom Christie. So weirdly enough, that was my favorite scene.
I really loved the not the flogging that Jamie got in the prison, but I loved when his mind permitted him to envision Claire coming to comfort him as she did at Culloden. And that was foreshadowed by his discussion with Jamie McCreary, I think is McCready. That was foreshadowing what was coming up. And so he went to that place, that happy place, that comfort place in his mind. And I just thought that was beautifully done. I felt that the reaction of the men watching him were like, he's not even, he's barely flinching. How can he do this? And it was because he mentally was able to take himself to another place and out of that being in the present moment. And so I thought that was beautifully done.
Did you guys have any comments on Antoinette's favorite scene? Let's do that too. I'll just say that I last time I watched it, I was hungry and I was like, that actually looks good, that food. One of the things about Mark Lewis Jones is he conveyed so much, and we got all the layers of that character in one episode.
Yep. I love that scene to Carmi. That scene that you spoke about. That was one of my favorites too. For all the reasons you said, in terms of Jamie being able to take himself out and go to his comfort place. And remember, in season 5, 12, Claire was able to go to her comfort place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which was Jamie when she was, being abused. So one of my favorites as well.
That was my actual top favorite that I had as my number one. For the same reason, just it really, I felt like it really took us back to the heart of who Jamie and Claire are, what the show is about. It was just, there we are, we got it.
Yeah.
So it was the most, I cried the first time I watched that scene, and
I did too.
It was the most visceral, the one that jumped out for me.
Antoinette scene. What jumped out for me in that scene was the governor making it obvious that when he had a disparaging comment to make about a Jamie.
Mhm.
And Tom Christie said him, and he was like, no, why would you think he's Red Jamie? Why would Red Jamie have done that? And
Mhm.
so it was just basically feeding into the fact that I already respect him, and you may be sitting at the table, but he has my respect. And that's what jumped out of me at me in that scene.
Mm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, and I
Yeah.
think that's Tom Christie's introduction to him, right? He didn't know him before Arts
Mhm.
Mirror, did he?
No, you didn't.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we get to see through these scenes this, that he starts to understand who this guy is. And if the governor is saying this guy is a badass, then watch
Mhm.
out,
Yep.
So I'll say my next favorite scene, and I picked Jamie and Claire's beautifully choreographed love scene.
Mm.
If that's what the intimacy coordinator did, for me, that was next level. It was so beautiful. The Jamie's words to her, and then just the whole thing I felt was just gentle and tender and beautiful and believable. I thought it was really nice.
Yeah. That was also one of my favorite scenes as well. And I have a problem with a lot of the sex scenes on TV. Most of them come across as very animalistic and just very crude and, uncomfortable to watch. This was uncomfortable to watch, not for that reason, because it was so intimate, I almost felt like a voyeur.
Yeah.
I almost felt like I was just peeking into somebody's bedroom.
Yeah.
And the fact that after all this time, they are still able to bring that level of intimacy, believable intimacy, is just mind-blowing to me. And the words that you use, Courtney, tender, when she was touching the scars on his back at the end.
At the end, yeah.
Oh,
what a way to finish. It was just
oh my God.
The scene was
It
like
was-
art, the scene was like art.
Very much so. It was beautiful. Sam said in an interview that how the intimacy coordinator helped him and Kat was that they found new ways to go deeper into the intimacy and to show it in a new way. And I said to myself, they've been doing this for a long time. Well, what new way is he talking about? Are they gonna be dancing on the ceiling? What? But no, I see.
Yeah, I read that too, and I had that thought. I was like, wow,
yeah,
that woman earned her pay just from that scene,
Yeah.
And it paralleled their wedding night.
Yes.
Remember the scene where he had his tartan wrapped around her and she was straddling him, and that it was very similar.
The pearls.
In that regard. But what was interesting though, and the pearl.
Yeah.
But what was also very interesting though was there was a difference, and that difference could be from their age because of their ages that they're supposed to be, but also a difference in their level of, I wouldn't say necessity. There was a certain gratuitousness to the first season that is no longer the case now, and you could sense it. But what it did, it actually made it more powerful.
Yes.
By them showing less skin, showing less. It's like you got glimpses, but it wasn't like full on, frontal or anything, which was the case with Katrina before. Their movements were very different. Even though they're still a couple. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I thought it was more powerful just simply because it was more subtle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And of course the wallpaper. I had to throw that in there.
I want to say that I think if that's the quality of filming that the director is pulling out, that we may find her to be a very good addition to the team, because I thought there was some really very nice photography done in this episode. It really was. Cool. And the words too. Yeah. What he said to her, sometimes I think you're an angel. I mean, that was just.
And he was so choked up. He was so truly choked up, It
No.
could have come off cheesy if
But
No.
it didn't.
It didn't.
No,
Those two really are able to project chemistry, in my opinion,
yes.
Yeah.
really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My favorite scene was actually the one after that, when Claire went when she couldn't sleep and she woke up and she went down to her surgery and essentially self-medicated with her ether that she had made. I felt that that was it was so it was medically very powerful just because my opinion of addiction is usually it's someone self-medicating for something else that they haven't been treated for. And so when I saw that, I was like, ooh, um, you know, earlier Jamie thought she was dead when she was under the influence of ether. And at that point, she was doing it as a scientific experiment. But the second time, it was simply to numb her mind, just to shut herself down because of the pain she was feeling. And I think that's one of the things that I found in across the episodes is that their portrayal of PTSD and post trauma of any kind is very well done and very realistic. And I thought that scene really portrayed it very well.
Yeah. Mhm.
That is definitely one of the things that we're going to discuss tonight. Should we jump into it now or save it for?
But save it.
Okay. Yeah, because that's a pretty controversial scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, it would be Kathy's favorite. If not, and I forgot to say in 501, Kathy's favorite scene is the musicians.
Because it looked like they were playing live music.
When I was
actually
editing.
playing.
Oh, you know what? That scene in the prison with Jamie and McCready when he was looking for the lock of hair. Oh, I mean, I'm a tough old broad, but you know, a tear came to my eye. You know, and that actor, you see, that's what the quality of the acting, you know, in this scene, in this episode was up there. For that little vignette, that guy was just so believable.
Yeah.
And so, oh, I love that little scene. You know, bring her to mind. Oh, stop it. That was another one of my favorites.
Okay. Carmen?
I want to say that I liked it so much. I tried to find his name. I couldn't find it.
Yeah,
What his
he's on-
name was, because it's such a tiny part, but boy, I agree. He did magnificently with that wee little bit of the episode. But I want to say that I really liked Claire's repair of Tom Christie's hand. I thought that was really well done, and it wasn't a tender sort of scene that would pluck our heartstrings. But what it was it showed very well the competition between those two men. And there's Claire in the center of all of this stuff going on around her, and she's simply trying to do her chosen field in life and take care of this man's hand. And she did a decent job of the portraying the stitching. I have some things to say about that later. But I also liked him swooning when he almost painted, and he did that really well, I thought. And I just thought it was really interesting, her finishing off them being like a couple of rams, going at it. So I enjoyed that scene a lot.
Yeah, she did some good eyebrow acting, because she was like, what is going on here? And then I also enjoyed Malva being part of the beginning of that. And we see her little, see, Dad, I told you.
Yeah.
Look,
She's got everything here.
Yeah.
She must be a witch.
Yeah. That was a good one. My third favorite was Alan's whipping scene. I was like, I sound like whichever one it is, a sadist or a masochist, with my favorites, but it's just because there were all those heavy hitters in the scene. We had the snake,
Wow.
He is so good. And Tom Christie and Alex Vallejos and Sam, and I really thought I was
Chris
surprised.
Larkin too.
Chris
Oh,
Larkin,
God.
yeah, Richard
He
Brown.
is ugh,
That's what I was saying.
so
The snake
creepily good.
with
It's
that
Oh,
the
ridiculous.
way he works his mouth.
Yeah,
Mouse.
that's so
Ugh.
strange.
Mhm.
But the first time I saw it, I was surprised. I was so surprised by that scene.
Mhm.
That's not from the book, is it? No.
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 It's
Mm-mm.
such a good adaptation, and
Yeah.
it was so well played. Anyway, yeah, I really liked that one.
It's really strange. But my other favorite one was when Mrs. Bugs and Lizzie were
That's on
having a
my
little
list.
power play over where things were
Yeah.
located on the table.
Yeah.
It was like that was such an unnecessary inclusion, but it was so perfect.
Yeah.
It was just perfect because like it probably won't go anywhere, but it was just so funny. Like we're in charge, and Liz like, nope, I'm in charge, and I moved it here and I moved it there, and it's like it looked like one of the gentlemen who came in was just like kind of noticed the change. He was like, what the heck is
the
going
hell?
on?
I think it was
I just thought that
Archbug.
was just funny. I like that. Yeah. But I just like that scene just was very I think it was just very indicative of how territorial they are
Mhm,
and how
mhm.
this has become a real it's like he's the laird, and this is it's like now it's like these are the people who are around court and who are taking care of things, and it's like they're taking ownership of where they are, and I thought that was just kind of cute.
We didn't get any intro to Mrs. Bug last season, even though she was around, and
Mm-mm.
so we're
Really?
starting to see when they were loading the wagon, she was telling her,
Mhm.
put
And
it
when
over
she came up,
there. Yeah.
yeah. And when
Yeah.
she came up and was obviously listening, and she came, we've got bread,
Yeah.
freshly baked.
Yeah.
So she was
Yes.
obviously listening to the conversation.
Scene where Roger helps Aiden McCullum. I thought that was really sweet. And that is the Roger from the books.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I was pleased to see that because he hasn't always emerged so far in the different seasons. But he is really in the books, he's a thoughtful, careful, caring person. And I thought that him, trying to help that little boy who just lost his father a month before and is come to a new land. He does, he must be completely lost. And for him to hand that olive leaf to him, and, invite him to, help him to create a home for them. It was just nicely done. The little boy was really,
Really
wonderful.
good.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Really good. And a cutie.
And a cutie. So I just want to give a thumbs up to that little scene. There's a lot, honestly, it was hard to narrow it down.
It really was. It was. I also liked the scene between Roger and Tom Christie when he first comes. I really loved when he sat on the table and he wiped it off. I was just
Don't you think that was his personality in a nutshell?
Yeah, it was just such a perfect
metaphor.
Yeah, and Roger's kind of sizing him up and trying to figure it all out, and yeah, I thought that scene was great too.
Yeah, I mean, every scene was my favorite scene. I mean, there were so few missteps.
Yeah,
there were so few missteps in the episode that it's hard to just narrow, because I loved the scene where they come back, where Claire and Jamie come back and he sees Tom and it's like, oh, and you see his hackles rise, and then you see him try to, dial it back, and then Christie's all, the two of them, Sam and what's the fella's name? Whatever his name is.
Mark.
The guy who plays Christie.
Mark
play excellently off each other.
And
they play excellently off each other.
I think Mark is like Sam. I think he plays excellently with everyone.
Yeah.
That's what I saw. And it's just, again, these heavy hitters now. The ensemble was fantastic, but then we have these heavy hitters peppered in. It was so great. So let's go, Antoinette, to what worked for you.
Ugh. The first thing that worked for me was the new rendition of the Skyboat song with the male singer Andrea. Oh, loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it.
Yep.
I loved how they took us back to Ardsmuir to set up the whole thing with Jamie and the conflict. And I loved how the writing worked for me on every level, because Matt was able to weave so many different storylines and make it all work and be cohesive and believable. So the writing worked for me. The casting was perfect.
Yeah.
Mark, the young lady who plays Malva, could she be any more slithery and snaky? The way she just creeped up on Claire so silently.
Did you say snaked?
Yes.
Is that
One cross between sinuous and naked?
Naked.
Naked.
Antoinette's come up with a new word tonight.
Yep.
So the casting choices worked spectacularly for me. The music and the writing, really stood out for me.
I'm going to reiterate about the casting. I just thought the casting was super, and so to the casting director, kudos, because I can't complain about anybody. Even Alan, because he's supposed to be a weenie and he comes across as one, I gotta say. And I was pleased to see the actor who does Harry Query, because he was in 303. He was the same fellow. They didn't switch him out. So he came back as Harry Query. And, I had to think to myself as I was watching him, he's supposed to have written erotic poetry, if you remember, from the Lord John series. Yeah, he did. He wrote erotic poetry, and it was hard. It's kind of hard to put that together, but it's true. I thought it was good to see Hayes and Leslie again. That was really nice.
Yes.
And I thought the conflict between Fergus and Marcelly is really, I think some people are surprised about that. And I saw one book reader on her blog say Fergus would never do that about the bruise on her arm. He did do it.
He did,
and it is in the book.
Yeah.
Because except that Bree sees it and tells Claire about it.
Yeah.
But in this episode, they just had Claire see it. But yeah, he did do that, and he's struggling, and I think the two of them have moved in that direction extraordinarily well. They are very effective as a couple. And we've enjoyed seeing their joy, to be together, and the delight of their relationship and everything. And so to see this change, I think it's going to be really interesting to see as we get closer to the root causes of why Fergus is medicating with alcohol. And I thought that Lauren played very well her concern for her family and for them as a couple and for him as a man, because she knows the dangers that he's starting to fiddle around with by being in a drunken state so much. So I thought that was good.
Yeah, I'm going to echo about the casting and the way they started the whole thing, and the way they kicked it off. I didn't expect that, and I thought it was brilliant to jump us to show us first the voiceover, and then the Ardsmuir, and all the character development there was fantastic. It really worked for me that Matt really adapts the books He really uses the book
He does.
as the source, and
Mhm.
even uses a lot of the words, but I think it just all comes through, and that really works for me. I thought the adaptation with Old Charlie was
Mm.
very creative and just flowed. And then the way they worked the tartan in there,
Yeah.
I thought that was very effective. I thought Kiki Fleming was very effective as a rabble rouser.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Claire's nightmare with voices and music from past seasons. I don't know if you guys picked that up.
Yes. Yes.
That we heard Galus and
Mm-hmm.
Ogle and
Blackjack.
Blackjack, and we also heard what sounded like the theme music from the Baccarat,
Oh.
or something very similar around that
Could be. I missed that, but
that
What
nightmare.
really worked for me was the pace and the way the story flowed. Sometimes when you, especially with first episodes, when you're trying to remind people of what happened in the past, and you're also trying to grab them to keep watching for the next episode, it can become a little choppy or rushed because
Yeah.
they're just trying to shove too much into one episode. And I didn't feel that at all. I was expecting it, and it didn't happen. So that was really what worked best for me, was that it didn't feel like at the end you're like, is that it? You know, sometimes you feel that way, and I didn't at all. It was like, oh, okay. You know, it was actually so emotionally draining. I was almost glad it was over because I'm like, okay, I can stop now. You know, the conflict between Jamie and Tom Christie.
Mm-hmm.
It could have been over the top, and it wasn't. It was very subtle, but it was very real. It was done in a way so that it didn't seem forced. Christy was clearly the antagonist, but the feeling, mutual feeling between the two was mutual.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually, and so it kind of added to Jamie's regalness, which we needed, because
Yes.
he seemed so emasculated in prior seasons. It was nice to see him get his balls back.
No, you're right. I agree with that.
I don't know
No,
how
I
to
agree
put
with
it.
that. I agree with that. The subtlety of the
Yeah.
performance by both men, because you're right, Kathy. You know, there's so much performative acting in Hollywood and in movies. Everybody's, oh, you know, and the only way to express deep emotion is to be all, ooh. And so I appreciated the whole entire ensemble in the episode. Everybody was restrained but not muted.
Yeah.
You know, used all the violent emotions and everything were still there, but everybody played them so nuanced. You know, it was just the whole ensemble led by Mark and Sam and Kat too.
Yeah.
You know, was anyway. It was just, I agree with you. The restraint and the nuance and how everybody carried their scenes together was just remarkable.
I thought that it was, at first, the first time I watched it, I thought the Ardsmuir section was too long. But when I went back and watched it again, I changed my mind.
Mhm.
And I did so because there was all kinds of backstory and history that was brought in that little 20-minute segment.
Mhm.
There is McDo, there was the Freemason issue, there was the Harry Query, and in 2 years he's going to get replaced by Lord John Grey. There's the Catholic versus the Protestant issue that was there. There was the struggles of the Highlanders to accept their defeat, and I just thought that it meshed together extraordinarily well. And that story was told effectively. It was didn't over labor any of the points, but it really laid the groundwork for the rest of this episode. Because if you just had Christy appear on the doorstep, without this backstory, yeah, Jamie could have said, well, we had trouble at Ardsmuir, or
Mhm.
something like that, but it wouldn't have given you given the viewer an appreciation of the kind of conflict that these men were struggling with
Yeah.
in there. And, when they were defeated, and you think about it, think about them now being in a prison and they have no way to vent their anger and their frustration about having lost that cause, except on other prisoners.
Mm.
And I just thought that it was great. I did wonder where Murtaugh was, and wondered if he was either ill or if this was prior to his arrival,
Prior
because
to his arrival.
That's
he
what I
is
decided
there
too.
in
Yeah.
1755 when
Yeah.
when
But
Lord
this
John
was set in
comes.
1753.
Yeah.
Yes, so we've got a 2-year gap there,
Mhm.
and my thinking is that is what happened too. He has not yet arrived at the prison.
I think the Arsmere scenes were also important for us to understand the man Tom Christie is, as it reflects or as it manifests as a father,
Mm.
because we'll understand better what Malva and Alan
Have to
go
deal with.
through. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah.
So should we go to least favorite scenes?
Okay. What the hell? I don't have a least favorite scene.
All the ones with Roger in them.
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Okay. The only misstep that I found with the episode
Yeah.
was the Amy McCallum. I just thought that even though the little scene with Roger and the little boy was so nice, I just felt that there were so many other things going on in the episode. I didn't like the insertion of Amy McCallum there in this particular episode. I know that it sets up other things for later, but I just felt that they're packed so much into the episode that this was almost one thing too many. So I didn't like the scene with her and Brianna and Marcella when she just honed in and we got her backstory. I just felt that that was just a little bit too much that they tried to put into the episode. So I didn't like that particular scene. And hello, that fake baby was just too fake. Come on now. It looked like her little fake baby that she had.
It was very flat.
It's very flat. It's so fake. It looks like a little log. No, I hate when they're lazy and don't. If they're gonna do something, come on now. CGI a little baby in there. Do something. But this little log that's always covered. How could the poor thing even breathe? So every time she came on the scene, every time she showed up with this thing over her shoulder and this log in there that doesn't even move, I wanted to say, lady, get off my screen. So that didn't work. None of Amy worked for me. I didn't like any of the scenes that she was in.
Okay.
With her little log baby.
I hesitate to say this because I hate being on the opposite end of the spectrum from Kathy. But my least favorite scene was Clara self-medicating with ether.
Oh, okay.
I was not happy about that at all for a whole bunch of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
In A Breath of Snow and Ashes, she does distill the ether in her laboratory or in her surgery, as was shown. But in Moby, Diana got it right. She had her out in a shed distilling her ether and not in the house. She knows a conflagration is on its way, and yet she's got open flames and she's distilling ether, which is highly flammable. Ether is still used in a lot of developing countries for the anesthesia of choice. You cannot have an electric cautery in the room where a person is being administered ether. You cannot have a coagulating tool there. You cannot have a Bunsen burner or any kind of an open flame in those situations because it is so flammable. And she would know that as a as a physician, especially one who was supposed to have some kind of scientific acumen. The other thing is that it's just unbelievable. As soon as she passes out and drops the mask, as soon as her lungs blow off the ether and she metabolizes it, she's going to be awake again. It's going to be in less than 10 minutes, for Christ's sake. She's not going to get, and ether does not give sleep.
Yeah.
It depresses the central nervous system. So a person doesn't awake from, it's not being asleep, it is being unconscious. And there's a difference between that. And I just think, I can see her taking alcohol. And I'm not saying that she doesn't need to deal with her PTSD, because she does, and it is hurting her. And she is in denial about it to the people around her. But she used alcohol in her failed marriage with Frank. We've seen her do that before.
Yeah.
So I could see that better. I did not like this. And then the worst thing of all, she pours the ether into her mask with an open flame right next to her.
Yeah.
God.
I don't know anything about it. And I thought, what? Wait.
You know what I thought?
Doesn't
If Antoinette held to the no.
I never said it was realistic. I just like the idea that they were showing the psychological impact of what happened.
Yeah. Right.
My issue is not with her using the ether, because I thought it was a clever device to show that she had to reach outside of herself for something to help her with the PTSD. Because normally in the books, Claire does a lot of self-talk.
Yeah.
And she's in her head and rationalizing, but you can't really depict that in a visual medium. So I thought her using something like the ether was a clever device to show.
It's
her
the ether I object
but
to.
How they realized it was bullshit. No, it was.
Yeah, even I was like
lazy. It was
like
lazy.
Candles everywhere. Because we all know that the reason that the house is on fire is because young Ian lights the match.
Lights a bloody candle.
Yeah.
Well, you remember well, it's going forward, but some guys.
Spoilers.
A guy
No
gets
spoilers.
into her.
I'm not scientific, so I'm not sure the whole setup in the surgery with the distilling of the ether. I said to myself, I wonder if that is authentic or realistic.
There were parts of it that I've seen before in those kinds of distilling units, and there were parts of it, but I didn't get a good look at it. At the whole thing to be able to see whether or not all the elements are there. I can tell you that. After she lit the fire underneath the distillery unit, it comes down like it's a faucet is running into the receptacle, that it does not condense and flow like that. It's a drip type of situation when you have that kind of a distillery. It's not. No, it's that wasn't accurate. And the scientist in me doesn't like those sorts of things. I get frustrated by it. But
I'm not a scientist, but I hate when they're lazy like that. If you're
I am a scientist. I always just switch it off.
You switch it off. And I can't.
Switch it. Because what I liked about it, because it's like,
what are you
I like the point of it was that she's her ingenuity. And so that's really what I saw.
Is that she is in pain, and that she has not resolved
the
that
setup,
pain.
the actual distillery thing.
I think it was pretty good, actually. The distillery itself, I thought was pretty well done. And I don't know if you noticed, but it had one of those little spigots on it. They actually have those in the laboratory. I've used them, and that was realistic. And they do have that. The old ones have the ball-like thing with the long pointed nozzle on it, and that was also in their setup. So I have
Mhm.
no complaints actually with the distilling apparatus that they set up. I'd
Mhm.
have to look at it really close to figure out if there was any issues with that. What I have a problem with is that is how they decided to take Claire to deal with her PTSD.
Mhm.
And it's just
Because of the nature of ether, you're saying?
yes, and because she
Carmen?
would not, I mean, she really put her home and her family and herself at risk by, pouring ether in next to a flame.
Yeah.
And she would know that they're not remember in the book, she has a mask and she has Malva or somebody
Drip it in there. Yeah.
Mhm.
count as the drips are going. That's called the open drop method of
Mhm.
ether administration. And that is how you do it, so that you can control the titration of it. She had, when she self-administers, she has no way of knowing. She can kill herself.
Yeah.
It can actually be lethal.
Yeah.
And people used to drink it, by the way. They used to drink
What?
ether, yeah, in
Well, maybe they should have had her
Poland and
drink it.
Ireland and places like that. It was a big deal. They'd mix it with
In
With,
Ireland, I could see that.
wine,
Mhm.
yeah, and drink it.
Well,
But-
my thing was, I just felt it was out of
I'll be
character
back.
for her.
Yes, that too.
I felt like the fact that she had a nightmare and Jamie seemed so surprised. I'm sure these would have been happening right along, And then he is very familiar with nightmares. So I don't think he would be like, "What's going on?" He did connect that it was because the Browns rode up, but I don't see them. That felt very uncharacteristic to me of them for her to get up and leave and not like process with him or something.
She closes the door
Yeah.
Yeah.
on him.
His
So-
reaction to her getting up in the middle of the night after having a nightmare, he seemed rather nonchalant. He's
Yeah.
far too protective to behave that way.
Yes.
And
He
he
wouldn't
has had
agree.
PTSD himself, so he
Yes.
knows what
Yeah.
that is. So I reached out to Diana last night since we had a little extra time, and I said, "What did you think of it?" And I'm not going to do word for word, but she basically said Book Claire probably wouldn't have done that for multiple reasons, including the not inconsiderable physical risks of doing it, addiction being a notable one. She said the show people are inclined to go big for PTSD in Claire, though. The World War II flashbacks. And she said, and God knows the woman is entitled to some. And she also brought up the difference between the show and the book and how she has unlimited time to deal with anyone's trauma.
Mhm.
But she also did say that Claire's usual means of dealing with trauma is Jamie, is
Mhm.
they go to each other. That's the part
Yeah.
that seemed like a misstep to me. Is like, what's
Yeah.
happening here? Aside from all the, choosing ether and candles and all that stuff. But she did say that it would be really hard to portray like what happened in the book there when they talk about Hodgepile and everything that goes on, as it was hard to portray the post Wentworth in the Abbey.
Yeah.
And she said, that said, I have the benefit of having seen the whole season, and actually I think they handle the whole thing pretty well within the
Mhm.
framework they've developed.
Mhm.
It works out slowly over the course of the whole season.
Yeah.
But it is, barring Claire's knowledge of how dangerous huffing ether is, it's not at all unknown for physicians to abuse it. And then she references John Irving's The Cider House Rules. Very plausible and moving. The acting between Katrina and Sam is amazing, and it does have a satisfactory conclusion.
Mhm.
That's encouraging.
That goes back to the point that I made at the beginning when I said I finally learned to stop conflating the books and the show.
Yeah.
Because back in another life, I was actually trained in acting. And I did a little bit of training on script writing. And I remembered that a book is constructed, with the dialogue and the paragraphs and that kind of thing. But a movie, a play, whatever, is done in scenes, little scenes that string together to tell the story. And a lot of Diana's books feature so much internal dialogue that it would be impossible to transfer that to a script for a visual presentation. So they have to adapt devices that can show internally what the characters are feeling using scenes and not dialogue. Otherwise, we'd be sitting down with hours and hours of them just talking, which you can't do in a TV show.
Right.
So that is why I said that I understand why they went with that device, but I agree with Carmi that they could have done it better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but
I do want to
no
say
issues at all with the device that they used.
I do want to say that ether is not addictive. It doesn't have any after effects after you come out of it. It can cause nausea and vomiting, but it doesn't have the kind of delayed weirdness that a lot of opiates and things like that does. It can be psychologically, you can get psychologically dependent on it, but it is not addictive. And there's a difference between the two. I think, Kathy, would you agree with that, that there's a difference between the two?
Which is why I think the scene resonated, but simply because it was to me, it was an act of desperation. And we rarely ever see her in those as desperate. She's a problem solver.
Yeah.
And so that just to me was an indication that she is suffering way more than what she's letting on. And the other scene where that was obvious was when the Browns rode up and you saw her quickly go into the house.
Yeah.
It was it wasn't a focus.
She fled the
right. And when she was with Brianna and Brianna's trying to draw it out of her, and she's
which was actually my didn't work for me.
Okay.
It seemed rather flat. It was like
which scene?
With Brianna and Katrina,
Claire,
and she's trying. I mean, that's what I mean. Claire trying to bring out her, trying to support her, and try to say, you know, we've been through the same thing. It just came off as rather. It just came off as flat and unemotional, and not saying that there had to be a lot of emotion. But seemed like there was no connection.
To be fair, Claire is closed off, even to Jamie. And one of the reasons why I appreciate the device that they use, because Claire, if you remember in the books, you know, Claire does not want to go there with her PTSD because she doesn't want Jamie. She doesn't want to remind Jamie of what he went through with Blackjack. So that was one of the reasons why in the book, she tried to deal with it on her own because she never wants him to
that part was realistic.
Blackjack.
Claire being closed off, realistic.
Yeah,
keeping her back to Brianna and whatever. But Brianna's trying to draw this out of her was the part that I was just like,
you thought was flat.
It was just seemed very amateurish to me.
Yeah.
Okay. I forgot to mention that she did say that there is Diana being the she, that there is that chapter in the book called Just Fine, where Claire does try to, you know, smash it all down, and Roger and Bree talk about her going in alone. And she also brought up this strong woman, she called it trope, of, you know, that's contributing, of that she just stomps on and handles it on her own type of thing. That's a little bit, I appreciate that it's way more subtle.
Yeah.
But it's apparently still there. My least favorite scene was the Lizzie Josiah, where, you know, Fergus is saying, where Lizzie's pretending to be a bad actor. That one I was kind of like, well, yeah, that, but I mean, honestly, I had to look to find a least favorite scene.
True.
I get really distracted by the wigs. Jamie's wig in particular. If I have to just kind of make my eyes like blurry over that part. I just don't, I just kind of like make them, you know how you can stare and just make it so it's blurry. I have to blur out. I can't look right here, else I'm like,
The hairline.
what? Sometimes it's crooked. Like sometimes his hairline kind of goes like that. I don't know.
His temporal notches are not symmetrical on that with that wig
No,
this
that's
time. Usually they were last season, I think,
maybe
because I didn't notice the asymmetry, but this time it's not symmetrical.
maybe Adso got a hold of his wig. I don't know.
Could be.
I thought they overdid the prop of the flask for Fergus. I thought it could have been a little more. He had that flask in every scene.
Yeah.
We could get that he's, drunk or drinking or whatever. I just felt like that was a little bit
Too much.
too much. Did you guys notice the tents that the Fisher folks were under?
Mm-hmm.
They look like they came from REI. I kept backing it up and going, how are these supposed to be from the ridge? They have like lines on them, and
They probably were.
did you guys notice that?
They were very tidy and even on the
Very and
sides.
orange. Were they orange?
Well, I thought they
Yeah.
were red, kind of reddish color
I
on
mean,
the underside. But
What kind of supplies could have made that from the 1700s? I was just like, what?
I don't know.
They must have just been like,
No,
we're
but
freaking sick of being wet. Get us a real tent, and I don't care.
But
You
it's
can
like,
CGI it out.
yeah, but it's like how all the Ardmere men who were supposed to be starving were also portly.
On my list, they do not look like they're starving.
No.
Oh, chunky.
But
All
then I
that
thought,
COVID weight.
well, this is 1753, so maybe they showed up like that, but they're supposed to have just
No.
fought,
Yeah,
been
because
starving
remember-
at Culloden, and
Exactly, they were starving and Culloden. And then I see all these chunky men, and I'm saying, what the hell? What are they eating this prison?
those
Are you
rats
talking about
must be
Adsmuir now or the
The
Fisher
Ardmere
folks?
Ardsmuir.
So fat.
Did you notice
Hayes
that-
was quite portly.
You know,
Hayes
Jamie said
was-
they get those rats for, to subsidize their,
Yes.
maybe they had some like, really
Everybody
big
looked very
Super
strong,
rats.
very well fed in
Yeah.
that prison. I'm sorry. They did not
Except
look
for the
like
guy-
starving prisoners to me.
Number
Yes.
one. What the heck were those prisoners doing with those rocks?
I don't.
Just moving
Was
them
what to
from one
tire them
place.
out, keep
they
them
were-
occupied?
Looked like they were building a cairn. I mean, they were
Yes.
just stacking them, but I it was just like,
It was just something to do. Come
I
on,
suppose.
we have to suspend our disbelief. They were just
That's one.
moving rocks.
And then the other one is, my word, Roger's beard. It's just,
Is that his real beard?
yeah, I think it
Oh,
is. I mean,
wow,
my
yeah.
God, it's everywhere. He's got it down on his neck and up toward his ears. And I'm like, holy mackerel. Could you dial it back just a little bit? It looks like a werewolf.
I think he looks like a
From
civil war
warthog
guy.
to werewolf. Poor guy.
I mean, he's got a pleasant face. Why cover it with all of that fur?
I don't understand. I think, do you remember he was in this, wasn't he in a play during lockdown? So maybe he had to go to that. And then he went
Maybe.
straight to Outlander filming. Because I
Could
can't
be.
think of any other reason why he has this shag rug on his face.
And it had like the curl thing.
Oh, God.
Yep.
So wrong.
Yeah, you lot are terrible. And I
Okay,
think I
let's
might be a
do-
little drunk. This
let-
sangria is very potent.
Okay. Well, Antoinette, things I noticed. Do you have any things I noticed?
Well, I
Besides
noticed
the portly.
I noticed the portly Ardmere men for sure.
Yeah.
But even Jamie looked so well built and everything. I'm saying, damn. Yeah, Prison Jamie.
We always
is
say that
hot.
about Jamie.
I said, woo, Prison Jamie is hot.
Oh God.
Also noticed the Freemason handshake. No, I grew up with a father who was very high up in the lodge.
Mm.
And yeah, my father was a worshipful master in his lodge. And there is no way that they would do that handshake where people could actually see them. And I'm wondering how authentic is that? Is that because I'm going to show my dad and ask him? I'm sure he won't tell me. He won't tell me
Yeah.
because they keep their secrets.
Right.
And I'm wondering how authentic, if that is a real Freemason hand. I mean, because they do have their little signals and stuff by means of which they identify each other. So I noticed that and I said, some Freemason is going to be very upset that somebody revealed that secret if that is really authentic.
Interesting.
Because my father keeps all his lodge secrets to this day.
I will say that when they did that, Jamie had turned his back and the officer attending him were leaving. And I don't think they knew that he turned around and saw what they were doing. Archbug has all of his fingers. I saw both hands over the between the food and the loading, and he has all of his fingers. I want to know, where was Rolo, especially when Ian comes in with the buck slung over his shoulder. There's no Rolo in sight, and I can't imagine him going off hunting without his companion. I noticed that it seems to me like they've toned down the furnishings in the big house a little bit. It didn't seem quite grandiose, ornate. And if you look, especially when Tom Christie comes into the house with Roger, and there's a pie safe, it looked like, in one corner, and it looked rather older, and a table, and it looked well used and things like that. And I think maybe they might be starting to work at making the house look more like in compatibility with the book description of the big house. Lizzie changed her hairstyle. She's always had it pulled back and tucked into a thing, and she's wearing it down now.
Loose.
Oh, yes. I wonder why.
I wonder why.
Did you guys notice one of those Protestant prisoners was hot? What?
No.
Which one?
Hold on, I knew you'd ask me, so I have a picture.
Bald-headed one, or the other one with the real Celtic features?
You see him?
I did notice him. Yep.
Oh, okay. I didn't notice him.
You did or did not?
I did. He had a presence, I felt, and a bit of nobility to his carriage that was really striking.
I wonder if we're going to see him again.
He would be a nice young William.
If not in the show, maybe at a fan convention. No, I'm kidding. Did you notice in the Skyboat song that they used lad instead of lass this time?
Yeah, I noticed that.
I noticed that.
When the man was singing, but when Rhea came in, they went back to lass. I noticed that.
I didn't catch that. Yeah. I love that. We've got equality now. Yeah. Did you notice that in the credits, Katrina's name used the diacritic mark, the Shinu Fada?
The Fada, yeah. They've been doing that for a while.
Have they?
Yeah.
Okay.
For who?
Katrina.
For Katrina, the Fada over the N in her name. Yeah. Yeah,
I haven't noticed that.
I think it's the I, right?
Or the I or the N, which one of them?
Let's see. I also like the opening duet with Rhea and the other guy, Raya. I said the Ardsmer men didn't look like they were starving. Did you guys notice young James's teeth?
Who's James?
The young James McCreary, when they showed McCready, yeah.
The one who died?
Yes, when he's talking to the scene one of you loved with the when he's talking to Jamie. He looks like he's used Crest teeth whiteners, and I wondered if it was because they CGI'd his eyes and it caught his teeth. Did anyone else notice how white his teeth were?
I'll have to go back and look. I did
I'll
not
have to go back
notice. I
and
mean,
check.
it was an unusual scene in that they were trying to bring forth the features in darkness.
Yeah.
And that's not always easy to do. You know, I think it takes some talent to be able to do that. But
I was caught up in the emotions of the scene. I wasn't noticing his dental work.
They were so white. I was like, okay. Did you notice it took Tom a damn long time to get to the door? They show him walking up, he sees the house, and then there's this long other part, and then he goes up to the door after that. Did anybody else notice that?
It did take a while, but I think they cut away.
They
cut away during
and then
that
came
time.
back.
And
They
then
did
they
cut away,
came back
so-
when he was climbing the stairs.
Yeah, they cut away and
But
came
they
back.
didn't cut away because they showed Jamie and Claire leaving their home to go to Marsley
Marsley.
and Fergus's. So I don't know. That was kind of that was a little strange. Did anyone hear the thunder clap when Jamie introduces Tom to Claire?
Did you see Tom's face?
I did. And it's like this is my wife Claire, and it goes boom. And I was like,
You mean when they
"Oh."
went out to give them the supplies
No, in the
in the
in the-
house?
in the house.
In the house.
Oh, okay. I
You
didn't
hear
know
it
And
in
the
the
look on
distance.
Tom's face, he's like, oh boy, I like this.
He's like, Jamie, you got a nice house and a nice wife.
So one of the first things I noticed was how the homestead had developed when they showed the aerial shot, and it just showed like the pastures and the different, and how, whereas before it was basically mud, and now it's this beautiful, I wouldn't say landscape, but it was just a nice, it looks like the equestrian farms around here. That's basically what it looked like. And to feed into that, of course, I noticed all the different colors. The walls, of course.
Yeah.
No, but even just the outside of the house, like that mustard color has always been, I've been very intrigued. And then I don't even know what color it is. It's like a deep aqua. It's not Hank blue, even though everyone keeps trying to tell me to say that, but it was like a deep, deep aqua color. Especially when Jamie was talking to the governor.
Major
Major
what's his
McDonald.
name?
Major
Yeah,
McDonald.
I knew it wasn't. I knew I had the wrong rank.
So,
But
yeah.
anyway, when they were in there, and it was just the woodwork, and it was all painted. It wasn't left natural. And then, of course, the wallpaper in their bedroom, which interestingly, in the last season when it was there, they showed so much of it. It was a bit overwhelming, and it looked really tacky. It looked like something out of a French brothel. This time they just showed a little bit of it, and it looked a lot more classy, and so it was nicer. But I did notice it. But it just seemed like it didn't seem like it would be Claire style at all.
Yeah, looks a bit.
So I'm like, who chose that for that room?
Yeah, I find
It just seemed very boudoir for me, like that whole like seedy. It just seemed a little seedy.
Oh, just weird choice.
Yeah.
I don't understand that unless it was to really highlight that that's their bedroom and it's different than all the other.
Could be.
I don't know.
And of course the green walls that when Fergus was telling them their daughter's name, and that green in there, all those walls were beautiful.
Yeah,
but,
you love Fergus and Marsley.
Yeah. But the other thing I noticed is that they showed the children, but they didn't really. They showed the children. They had Jamie say the names. But we never got a good look at them. Almost like we may not use these children again, so don't get used to looking at their
Don't get
faces.
used to them.
And where was Jemmy? We didn't see him once.
He said his name when he was in the back.
He was running. There was a picture of him running from behind at one point. I don't know.
Not Jimmy.
But not in.
It was someone else.
But not in this.
Germain was.
Yeah,
in
that's what he said.
The Germain was in the wagon.
In the wagon.
He doesn't look like
With
he's
the two
aged
little
at all.
girls.
No, he doesn't really.
So
I want to interject here at that wagon scene. Did you see one of the Hellcat girls? I don't know if it was Felicity or Joni, but that is one of the prettiest faces I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah,
She
that
was
little-
sitting next to Germain,
Yeah.
and she looks like that little girl from Les Miserables, that's on the poster. Oh my gosh, she's beautiful.
Those big eyes.
Yes, she was just
Yeah.
sitting there, just
When is this scene over? No.
it was
Is
quick.
it lunchtime yet?
But Jemmy didn't show up once. I was like, what? Bree and Roger are like,
I thought we saw the back of his head.
no.
Maybe it was in
I
the
didn't see
opening
Jemmy at
credits.
all.
Yeah, it was in the opening credits.
That's what it was.
If that's
I didn't see
him
Jemmy
carrying
at
an
all.
airplane. But I kept thinking, well, where's Jemmy? There's Lizzie. She's not with Jemmy. Anyway,
Mhm.
Mrs. Bug.
maybe he's with Rolo.
Yeah, Jemmy and Roller are
And
on adventure.
Adso,
Oh,
who
but
also
hold on
was
a second.
absent.
So I forgot one of my least favorite scenes. How the hell does Ian and what's his face, Alex, or what? Not Alex, the character,
Alan.
Alan end up going hunting? That just what? What? When? Who? When? What?
And then
You
why
know,
would they shoot at them and then not make a fuss about the horn at that
You know what
moment?
I'm saying? They're building
Oh,
cabins,
well, that
and then the
made
next thing
sense
you
to
see,
me.
them hunting like they've been friends for decades. I'm saying, what the hell?
Well, I
At
mean,
least
I
he
think,
was laughing at him.
I think they could say, like, boys go hunting. What exactly did young Ian kill there? Looked like a gray
Bird
A
of,
big-
it was a
It
bird
looked
of
like
some,
a big
maybe a
piece of
turkey
fur.
Oh, the bird. Oh.
or a goose. It was a bird of some
Piece of
kind.
fur.
Yeah, I thought it would look like a big gray stuffed animal.
It was.
Well, I will say about that scene, I thought that was interesting foreshadowing when Alan said, "You're a good shot with that thing."
Mm. No spoilers.
No
Courtney.
spoilers. No spoilers.
No.
Oh, and then 10 lashes for Alan. I thought that was a full circle moment, since Tom had just said, at least this will be an honorable scar. And then his son got 10 lashes, just like he watched Jamie get 10 lashes in Ardsmuir.
Yeah. But somebody was complaining on Twitter that there was no blood when Alan got a lash.
It was a belt.
I'm saying one he had on a shirt and two it were a belt.
And it was a
wasn't
belt.
whip.
It was a belt. By the way,
But he
that took
welted.
me back to episode 109, The
Yeah.
Reckoning.
Yeah.
Because when he goes like that
Oh,
with
yeah,
his
yeah.
belt, that's what he did with Claire.
Claire was probably inside shaking.
Yeah.
Did Alan get spanked on the butt or on the back?
We don't
back.
know. I think it was his back,
It was
probably.
his back. It was his back. You see, I am so intrigued as a book reader and knowing the departure in how I'm so interested to see how they carry this through,
Yeah.
for the rest of the season. It just sets everything up so perfectly. I am just on tenterhooks because I think they started so cleverly that I'm hooked. I'm so completely hooked.
Me too.
Noticed that I really didn't like was the song. I didn't like the renditions of the Skyboat song. In either
I didn't
one.
either. I
You
really
didn't?
didn't
I didn't like the
either. And I
duet,
hate
and I
to
didn't like
say
the
it,
first one.
I didn't like the duet.
I didn't
really
like
didn't.
him solo, but anytime Raya,
Yeah, I mean,
Raya.
Rhea has a beautiful
Oh,
voice.
she's like
She
an
does.
angel.
I mean, she had a beautiful
Voices.
voice, but I didn't like the composition of it.
I didn't
The
think it
musical
was.
composition. It wasn't her voice. It was just the composition.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Okay.
didn't
Well-
care for it either.
I noticed that we will be getting some of the writers that I've really liked from past seasons.
Ooh.
Jaina Fuel, I don't know how to say her name, Danielle Barrow, Barbara Stepansky, and Luke Shelhaus, who did a good job in season 5. Also
That's
spotted in the
Mhm.
credits, Hiram Crombie, Mrs. Crombie, and Mrs. Wilson, which leads me to believe that we will get that scene, which I love.
Oh, you mean
where
that scene.
where the grandmother
Spoilers.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And they had a whole COVID team.
Yeah.
As
Mhm.
I
on
noticed that. That
added.
was crazy. COVID marshals and COVID manager and COVID
Yeah.
this,
Well, they
that, and
had
the
to. I mean, can
third.
you imagine the liability if someone were to get COVID and, you know?
Lab
I
tested.
understand that they created quite a bubble
Yeah.
in order to be
Yeah.
able to do this, and it's pretty remarkable that they pulled it off, given the
Mhm.
complications they were
that was
faced with.
going on,
Yeah.
especially with Kat being pregnant. That must have been a hell of a challenge.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, I don't know if I'll keep this in, but I noticed Claire's breasts during the lovemaking
Yeah.
were much bigger with darker. How do you say that?
Areola.
Areola.
Areolas.
Areolas.
I did notice that it was like her arm was strategically placed at certain times and
Yeah, but
different things like that.
her
but that was it.
areolas were more pigmented.
Yeah. And her
Mhm.
breasts were bigger.
Yeah.
One of the things I love in this episode, before I forget, is snarky Jamie. Jamie is so shady
Yeah.
in this episode. I loved it. I loved it when he when they were when they went to help them, and what's his face, Christy was, oh, this is what we do when we build them a church. And then Jamie said, have any of you ever built a cabin?
Yeah.
Let me show you how we do things here.
Yeah.
I
Snarky
love
Jamie.
I love shady Jamie.
I did notice that Ivy had grown on the big house. Catherine, to your point,
Mm.
it had
I
grown
didn't
all up
notice.
the
I
chimney.
just noticed the color of the house, which is beautiful.
And
None of them are typical colors. That's why I noticed all of them.
Yeah,
Like
I think that's John
because
Gary
as someone,
Steele's
I paint,
hand.
yeah,
and so I was looking at them, thinking, what colors would it take? What would I have to mix to reproduce those colors? And that's what I was thinking every time I looked at. Every time they showed a scene in and around the house, that was usually
yeah.
what I was going through. And there's actually someone who does on
that.
Instagram. They take
Oh,
scenes and
yeah.
then they do the palette.
I forgot
for
what
the
it's
scene.
called. You mentioned that before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be
I have
interesting
to look that
see.
up. Let's go to medical anatomical. What about those blind eyes?
I couldn't see. This is the thing I didn't understand. When he was outside, he wasn't moving and functioning as if he were blind. He looked like more like he had a musculoskeletal issue, because I was just like, does he have some neurologic issue? The way he was walking up before he was bowing to the gentleman with dementia who thought he was
Prince
the
Charlie.
king.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when he was moving, it was just very dyskinetic. So I just thought, okay, something's going on with him neurologically. I didn't get blindness from the way he was moving.
I was just going to say that he does say to Jamie, I'm losing my sight. He doesn't say that
Yeah.
he's blind.
It just seemed incongruent to me. Did it seem that way to you as well?
I didn't.
Like between the two scenes, it's like one seemed like he was far more
Functional.
disabled than he was in the other scene.
Well,
Yeah,
he
then
also
I
was
couldn't tell. The timeline
emotionally.
was really strange for me.
I think part of it was that he was emotionally distraught because he was looking for that lock of hair.
The lock of hair.
And
could be
unable to find it.
dark and light. Because what does he have? Does he have like cataracts or what?
I don't know.
I didn't look like cataracts. It would look more something else. Because cataracts, you would look it would just be the pupil would be whited. Because it would be the lens behind the pupil.
I couldn't tell
cloudy.
what they
Actually, what it looked like was river blindness, but I don't usually that's carried
That's
by
not
mosquitoes.
not in
So
Scotland.
yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. So I mean, I've seen that before in Africa, but it was usually from it was a parasite. So I don't. They do really good job with the psychological stuff, I have to say. I mean, they're just good with that. I don't know how or why, but they just seem to be very consistently right every time. The other I noticed was she was sewing Tom's hand, and I couldn't remember. It's like, how did she make needles? Did she make, it's like I couldn't remember the story behind the
in the book,
needles
she
and the
curves her meat.
sutures.
She does make
Well,
a
I
curved
remember in
needle.
the book, but I was like, I didn't remember it ever being addressed in the show at all, or like
I
what
don't think
she's
so.
using for suture. You know, I know catgut is one, or but I was like, I assume, you know, well, they called it catgut, but I'm assuming it wasn't from really from cats. But uh,
Ew.
but I know they used intestines at some point in
They did.
history to make
They also use
sutures.
silk thread. I mean, they've used
Yeah,
all
that's
sorts
true.
of stuff.
So I guess there
on a
was
handle.
thread, like it had not been cleaned. That was
No,
really
she
what it
did
just didn't
clean
look
it.
like
Between when he
it.
came in with it was all bloody. Don't you remember him opening it up and his whole hand
And
was
then he
bloody? So
fainted.
she did
But
clean
for a
it. It didn't
surgeon,
show.
it's like a pre-surgical
No, it didn't.
hand
No,
to me.
I
For
agree.
someone who is a surgeon, it wouldn't have looked like definitely
that.
him fainting was very realistic. I've
thought
seen
he
it
did a
happen,
good job.
unfortunately. Yeah. And then the precursor to her talking about his hand and his talking about releasing the tendons of his hand, which is, but he just seemed a little bit too comfortable with the new procedures. You know, it's not every day that people get sutured. For someone, maybe it was because well, we won't talk about.
I mean,
He's very uncomfortable in the book. If you remember that section in the book, he's
Yeah.
sweating and you know, he wants to get up and go and
Mhm.
leave, and it takes her quite a while to settle him down so that to
Mhm.
let her even see what he's done. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think they could have had him be a little bit more anxious than what
he was. Looked too
Than what
mellow.
they showed. And the other
Mhm.
part I like, it has not, maybe it's not medical, but more scientific, was how they showed Melva's intelligence by her connecting the phosphorus with fire. I mean, it's like she made a connection very quickly, and it makes sense. And you could see Claire was impressed by it. That she was like, this child's obviously intelligent, even though her thing about Lucifer and, you know, the fire and whatever, you know, but that notwithstanding, she was asked the right questions to come to a conclusion as to what it was. And I thought that was pretty,
Yeah.
it just showed what kind of mind she has, even though she's naked, but
So my first three lines were about the ether, but I think we've covered that, as you said, pretty well. So I don't think, I thought that them trying to show Dupuytren's contracture was decent. You know, I mean, it's the hand naturally, when it lays on its back, it goes into the similar kind of a situation. That's the natural folding of the fingers. To have these two curled more than these two. In the United States, this is not a finger, by the way. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 fingers. The thumb is its own self. That's different than Europe.
Okay.
But I thought that the FX of her stitching, she did a pretty good job. Did you see her wrap the thread around her pinchers or her forceps? Did you see her loop it?
Surgical.
Yeah. On the first loop, she would have done it twice normally, and then on the second one once. We only saw her do it once. I don't know if that was the first or second knot, but that would be typical. I also noticed that the other thing is that she started stitching about a third of the distance along the cut, and normally you stitch in the center and then you start dividing.
Then you
two.
go.
Yeah. But it honestly, she, you know, her manipulation of her tools and stuff, it was pretty darn good for somebody who hasn't had any background in suturing.
What do you mean? She's been a doctor for 8 years.
And you know, the Dupuytren's contracture, we'll see at the hog roast if he lets her take care of it. I'm sure he will. It's also, by the way, nowadays it's called Dupuytren's disease, so that they can use the DD acronym because I guess it's shortening it. And so I've seen that a lot in what I've looked at recently, that it's just called DD for short. But it's also known as Viking's disease, and it is very common in people, especially men of Northern European descent, but it does occur in some Mediterranean countries too, but it's very uncommon in Asians and Blacks. It is a disease that really affects mostly people of Northern European descent. And if you read about it, I'm going to do a little mini lesson on it, but if you read about it, there's a lot of mistakes in its description online. It is not the skin that is the problem. It is the palmar fascia that gets these bands, and when they tighten, they pull typically these two fingers, but sometimes others of the digits. It can even affect the feet. And it can be really debilitating for some people. And there's quite a few different treatments now, but I just was really happy to see that they included it. I didn't know how they were going to portray it. And he has really fleshy hands, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Jim, did you notice that?
I thought his hands, it's almost as if his hands were CGI.
Yeah.
Saying, ugh. You talk about ham-fisted.
Well, I'm sure they had, something where she was stitching,
Oh,
a
that was,
prosthetic thing.
that was some either a fake hand or no, I don't mean that. I mean, it's when she's looking at his Dupuytren's, as she looks at it, he's got all of these weird sort of pads on his hands.
Yeah, ham-fisted. Yeah, I noticed really that too. And I'm saying, damn.
Did you guys notice, did he have his hand like that throughout all the scenes?
I didn't
notice. The rest of the episode?
I didn't notice that.
I didn't either.
He may not have a very serious case either. There's a lot of range, between people who they actually have to amputate the fingers on some people because it's so bad that they get in, it interferes with their life.
Yeah.
But and there's people who just have it a bit. My dad had it of his ring finger here. He had it, and but he didn't have it very bad. He didn't pay any attention to it. He did carpentry work and all sorts of stuff with it. So there's a range.
Did you have an idea of what kind of blindness they were trying to portray in old Jamesy? Don't you guys think
the only thing is if it's a chemical burn of some type, maybe if he has like a blast burn, but I couldn't, like I said, the only time I've ever seen that was parasitic. So I don't know.
I did notice that, they were all wrestling and stuff and everyone was, and then some guy just hit that guy with a rock over the head. That it seemed a little bit incongruent.
Came out of the blue.
Yeah, with the let's kill the blind guy.
Oh, here's a convenient rock.
Yeah, I mean the rest of people were wrestling. Nobody else was doing that. But anyway,
the rocks.
I guess they needed that to move the story forward. BTS behind the scenes. I told you about the Diana. I also reached out to Agiv O'Brien, who is the Gaelic consultant, and asked, what does Jamie say when he yells for the prisoners to stop? And he says, phonetically, it's like skuriv. You guys remember that? When
I was wondering what he said too.
I just assumed it meant stop.
Well, it means stop all. It includes all. And then he says enough. And I didn't know if that was all a Gaelic phrase or if it was, because it sounded like enough, but I don't know. Anyway, so that means stop, and it's a you plural, stop all. And phonetically it's SKOO-RIV. And spelling wise, it's looks like squid or something. That's Gaelic. Jamie mentioned the stork bringing babies, and I looked that up to just see, is that historic? I kind of was like, really? Did they say that stuff then? And it actually dates back to 600 years ago.
Oh, wow.
I thought it was really interesting during the pagan era, which can be traced back at least to medieval times. More than 600 years ago, it was common for couples to wed during the annual summer solstice because summer was associated with fertility. At the same time, storks would commence their annual migration, flying all the way from Europe to Africa. The birds would then return the following spring, exactly 9 months later.
Oh,
So that's where that
how
started.
interesting.
That's cool.
Yeah. And it
That's
was
really cool.
yeah, it's most firmly established in Northern Europe, particularly Germany and Norway.
Well, I thought maybe that the Ardsmuir scenes were filmed in Glencoe. It looked like I don't know if you saw those mountains in the back, that some of them were
Yes,
scooped.
it was Glencoe.
I think I thought it probably was.
Yeah, it was. It was. Somebody
was it?
Yeah, somebody said it on Twitter or Instagram.
Okay, I thought it was.
Or Kiki Fleming.
In the book, when Tom arrives on the ridge, it is in the Fiery Cross, and Jamie is in bed from the snake bite. He's recovering from the snake bite. So they moved that out of season 5 and put it in season 6 and just had him off with Claire, going on rounds with her. So I thought that was interesting. The dates, if it matters to you, Christie arrived in 1752, according to the books. Jamie arrives in 53, and John Gray arrives in 55. So it's a fairly close succession of these characters coming into contact with each other.
I noticed at the premiere, ironically, on the red carpet, the actress who plays Mrs. Bug is very soft-spoken. I don't remember her name, but it was literally like, I was like, is she talking? My last one was Alan Decker, who was dedicated to, was a sound mixer.
Oh,
in season 1, who passed away.
Okay. I was going to ask, that's on my list. Who is Alan Decker?
I noticed that. Yeah.
Okay, let's do favorite lines. Did you have one?
My favorite line would have had to have been when Jamie said, "Does anybody do you know how to build a cabin?" When he was being so
putting
shady.
old Tom in his place.
Yes.
The Pope isn't here with me and my men. I really like that because Jamie is a very pragmatic person.
Yeah.
He really is. I mean, he's a faithful man. He believes in a supreme being. There's absolutely no doubt about it. He believes in, he's been raised a Catholic, and it's imprinted on him very strongly, but he's also remarkably pragmatic about, whereas Tom is not about his religion, in my opinion. He's, he's rigid.
He's
and
zealot.
Jamie is flexible. Yeah. So I love that statement. When Harry Query says that he's going to be excommunicated.
Was that in the book, that line?
I think it is. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, you mean the Pope isn't here? I don't remember that part, but I remember Harry Query.
That part is in the book, but Jamie doesn't say it. Somebody says it about Jamie when they were when I think it is Roger, when he was telling the story of how the lodge was formed at Ardsmuir. Oh, yeah. I don't think Jamie actually said it in the book.
Okay.
If I'm recalling correctly.
I do remember. I think I remember Harry Query saying to him something about, won't you get excommunicated? I don't remember if it was about becoming a Freemason. I think it was, but it's been a while since I read it. The other one that I liked was from Claire when she said, "New governor, same thumb."
Yeah, that was a good
They're
one.
Still under his thumb.
Yeah,
Different governor, because Josiah Martin replaces Tryon.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, I thought that was a good line. And then I'll leave some more for other people to say.
Well, I just picked one, and that was from the Ether voiceover By blood and by choice, we make our own ghosts
Own ghosts.
haunt ourselves.
Yeah, that was a
I
good
thought
one.
that was a good one. And that's probably from the book, I think. That whole thing seemed like it was from the book.
No, I don't
No?
remember her saying that.
I don't
We,
remember
by
her
blood or
saying
by
that.
choice, we haunt ourselves. No.
I
That
think
wasn't
it
in the
was
book.
like a prelude, maybe, or a prologue.
Boy, that could be. She
Yeah.
Could
does a
be.
lot of that.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'll have to
I'd have to
that,
look
but
it up and
Me
see.
too. Yeah.
What
I
do you
don't know.
think
But
she
I'm-
meant by blood and by choice?
Well,
What do you
she's
think she's
talking about, how we all have ghosts. She's talking about, I have my mother's eyes and my great grandmother's smile,
Mhm.
and then we have ghosts that come about. That's family
because of
ghosts
the
by
choices
blood,
that we made.
and then we have ghosts that come about because of our choices. Because of our choices in life.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's what I
I just
thought.
wondered what you ladies thought.
Interestingly, because as I was going through it, I forgot to write down my lines. But one of the what I liked best about certain lines was how they were delivered, and I felt that Lauren
Mhm.
did the best job of delivering lines with the weight that was required. And that is really, I can't remember the exact words, but every time she spoke about Fergus, it's just every single time she spoke, it was like you could feel the weight of the words she was saying. And that's really what stood out to me most, more so than the actual words themselves.
Lauren Lyle is really,
She's a
really,
phenomenal
really
actress.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
Really
is.
she
good.
is.
She is just so
Really good.
instinctual. Nothing performative about her at all.
And she's so
Yeah.
embodied.
Yeah.
They finally gave Fergus something to do, and then of course he's drunk the whole time.
Carrying his prop. I'm
Yeah,
drunk, see?
but they didn't. I mean, they finally gave him something.
I
Yeah.
think
to
we're gonna
do
see some meat. Meryl Davis in the panel that was after the premiere said Lauren and Cesar kill it this season.
Yeah.
And I've never
Good.
heard anything like that said about him. So
Yeah,
I'm excited.
good,
Me
because he
too.
deserves it.
Hopefully he'll
He does deserve to get something to do.
Yeah. And I mean,
You
I
know,
wanna-
just
I
then
wanna
just
see his-
stand in the background and
I want to
you know,
see his
look
chops.
pleasant.
Looks pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
gotta
thought
go
Jamie
soon.
saying, "My God, he's a stiff-necked bastard."
Bastard.
I
Yeah.
like that one a lot, which is absolutely true. And
Very
I
much
thought
so.
Fergus's statement, "Sorry, I'm such a disappointment," that was just
Oh,
heartbreaking.
me
He,
too.
Yeah.
you know,
That
one
really
line, he just
hurt me in the
nailed it.
heart. Yeah.
He said, he says, "I'm just sorry," and you could see
Mhm.
and hear the pain,
Yeah.
that he's
That
struggling
one got me
with.
too.
That was one of my favorite scenes. I loved the camera work, how they had them set up, and Marsley's in the foreground, and Fergus with her back turned, and Fergus is standing there looking at her, processing,
Mhm.
and then delivers that line.
Yeah.
That's a great scene.
Yeah.
Outstanding. Outstanding.
I did think he slammed that door and woke up all those babies. I wasn't pissed before. I would be now.
I thought Tom Christie's comment, "At least it will be an honorable scar, won't it?"
Honorable scar.
Do
Yeah.
I mean that was just such a slash.
Dig.
And
Yeah,
so
it was
well
really
delivered.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it
and
really was.
he's
But
just
Jamie's like, yeah, but I don't faint at the sight of blood either. So I mean, it's like
That's what he should have
at that
said.
point,
yeah.
My
No, I
God,
just
he's a
thought it was.
stiff-necked
I
bastard.
just thought it was. Jamie's not going to get too upset about. He considers the source.
Yeah. He slammed the door though.
but he's
Yes.
ungrateful. I mean, he's such an ungrateful little.
Little
Oh,
bastard.
he's very pompous, and he
Very much so.
obviously thinks he's in the right, which a lot of religious zealots do, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Did you
That I
guys
have
notice
known.
at Ardsmuir when he was preaching, like his head looked like it was gonna fly off? He
Yeah.
he
Explode.
literally started to look like the Hulk.
He's like, yeah.
He's like Sam, where he looks different in every scene, depending on what he's bringing forward. He
Portraying.
looks bigger or smaller or this or
Mhm.
that. I mean, I just am so excited to see more of him in this role.
Me too.
Okay, standouts. Mine's Mark Lewis Jones and the
Mine
music.
too. Mine too.
Okay.
Mark Lewis Jones, snarky, shady Jamie. I love the device of the ether, even though I didn't like how it was rendered.
Mhm.
Marcelly is always a standout. She commands the screen,
Yeah.
even though she's only a little thing.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole episode was a standout for me.
Yeah, really.
Because I really struggled to find things that were missteps and things that I really didn't like. So yeah. I mean, it's a lazy, it's a sort of a cop out to say that, but that's how I genuinely feel.
Yeah. Carmen?
I would agree about Mark. And I also, I thought Sam did a good job in this
Oh yeah.
episode. He always delivers. But I also like Chris Larkin. I just think that
Oh,
he
God.
is just really,
Ooh.
you know, he doesn't have a huge part, but he's turning out to be as menacing a villain as
Bonnet.
his weasel of a brother.
No,
Lionel.
and like,
Remember the weasel and the snake?
yeah. He's a villain like Bonnet, but he doesn't overplay it like sometimes what's his face used to do Bonnet. You know, the evil sliminess of him just oozes out of him. So
yeah, he's menacing. He's menacing.
That little
Stuff
mouth.
he does with his jaw. I think he's menacing. I could see Kat's pregnancy around her waist. If you look at her belt, her waist was thicker. Not much, but it was.
Yeah,
I felt
that's one of the things
it.
I noticed also because of her jacket and that belted jacket she had on. That was just gorgeous.
Yeah.
All the jackets, the costumes were very, very well done.
Yeah, they were beautiful.
Beautiful.
Well, what did you guys think of the sets? Like, it seemed to me a pretty besides the REI tents, it was a pretty seamless transition between John Gary Steele and did anyone write down the new person's name?
No,
I didn't.
I didn't either. I'll have to look it up.
The things that stood out to me were the things that were just seemed inconsistent with the rest of the episode. So everything was just done so well, the costumes, the acting, the music, the writing. And then you have Bree. Sorry, but
Bree.
the character was, I mean, maybe it was the writing, maybe it was the development of the character for what was going on. She just seemed like a non-entity.
They didn't give her anything to do.
And the one little thing they did do was just a precursor to kind of talk about her. Well, it was just her whining about being an engineer and I guess wanting to, you know, contribute more around the homestead area, but being afraid because of how people would think, what people would think. But I just felt like there was no reason for her to be in this episode.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, her acting hasn't developed any, so and everyone else's has, so she's kind of being left behind. But
you know, we've talked about this before, but she does best when she has really strong emotions to play.
To portray.
When she's doing ordinary
Regular
life,
stuff.
she's not terribly interesting to me. She doesn't have, I don't know, she just doesn't have the skills, I guess, to put something into even lines like that will be interesting to the audience. She's not interesting to me most of the time.
The first time I watched it, when it came to a scene with her, it felt like something changed, you know, it's like a different level.
The heaviness kind of just became light and not as
impactful.
I mean, gravitas keeps coming to mind, but it's not the use of the word, but there's just something.
Well, she's just surrounded by so much talent, and it just feels like a different. It's almost like, oh yeah. But now-
However,
but
the
now I'm
chemistry
used to
between
it,
her
so-
and Rick has gotten better though.
Yes.
I agree.
Yeah, I noticed that. They
Yeah.
seem more at ease with each other.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Yeah, I did.
Well, it
So
only
I
took
felt they were a little bit more
Four
believable as a couple.
First season.
They were more believable as a couple. They looked
Mhm.
comfortable together.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Okay, let's do big themes and then get out of here.
Yeah. Whew. My big theme was the grass is not always greener. I noticed that Tom was so envious of Jamie and the apparent trappings of success, the house, the land, everything. And he kept referring to it. Oh, and then his son, oh, you live like a king. And then Tom was saying, oh, all this land and everything. But they have no idea what Jamie and Claire have gone through and are going through. So it's all well and good to stay on the outside and look on people's lives and end them, but you have no idea what is going on with them. You can't really stay on the outside and judge people for, and look at their lifestyle and make, conclusions about how good they have it and how bad you have it. And the other thing, especially in the context of what's going on in this country, is how zealots like Tom Christie weaponize religion to control people.
well said.
Yeah.
That came across so vividly to me in this episode. From Ardsmuir to on the ridge, where he's telling his people, oh, we're going to build them a church and we're going to show them. And it's just so cynical and so evil, because a lot of these religious zealots don't really believe what they espouse.
No.
But they just see it as a means of controlling people.
Those are both really good ones. And one thing that I was going to say is that I thought the episode did such a great job of showing that Jamie is such a man of substance compared to Tom Christie, who's full of hot air. He wants to be like Jamie, but he's not.
One other thing I wanted to say is that what the episode showed and what we haven't really seen a lot, because sometimes they tend to make Jamie look like this swashbuckling hero type and, oh, Jamie saves the day. But Jamie is a reluctant hero. He doesn't want to be all these things. He just wants peace and quiet with his family and just, but because of who he is always thrown into these situations. And because he's a man of honor, he's going to step up to the plate. But he does not go out seeking this. It comes to him because of who he is. And I thought that especially the Ardsmuir scenes really brought that out for me in this episode.
Expanding on that perhaps a little bit is that Jamie is a born leader of men. Yes, his experiences have added to that ability, but I think he just is innately a leader. And people feel that when they're around him. Tom Christie is not. I think he's envious and jealous of Jamie. And he uses the Bible like a cudgel to beat people, including his own children. He's damaging them so badly. It just breaks my heart, actually, to see what he's doing to his children. But for me, the biggest theme that I saw in this is that the Ridge is in conflict. And that conflict is coming from within now in terms of Tom Christie, because now he's arrived. He's going to be a thorn in Jamie's side, and Jamie knows it from the minute he walked into his
whatever that room
or whatever
is.
That room was, where he was sitting. You could see it on his face. He knew what it was bad news when he heard that he was going to stay. So there's conflict from within. There's conflict nearby by Brown with his committee, of his
Safety.
safety. And then there is the war, the Revolutionary War on the horizon. So it reminded me, when you look out from Fraser's Ridge and see those mountains disappearing in the distance, well, it's somewhat similar, because there's all these waves of conflict that are billowing in the undercurrents of the life on the ridge. And it's that, I think that's what's going to come about in this season.
Interesting. I like that.
My big theme was about choices with big consequences. You know, because we all go along, we do our best, and especially for somebody like Jamie and Claire, they have all these people depending on them, you know, and you just make your best choice. There's Jamie. Should he be the Indian agent? Should he not? He was no, now he's yes. Roger made the choice to bring the Christies on. He's got his choices about Amy McCollum. Jamie could have said, no, you can't stay here, Tom. But he chose not to do that. It's kind of reminds me of his choice to let Stephen Bonnet go. Like sometimes these things, you know, we make choices in life and we have no idea the ripple effect and the downstream effect that's going to happen. You know, Claire inadvertently shared information with Malva, you know, about phosphorus, and then she's interested, and we're going to see
all of a sudden Satan's
goes.
in the mix.
Jamie had to make the choice, you know, the hard choice with Richard Brown there, and Tom Christie in front of his whole hog roast party to whip Alan Christie. I mean, it just, there are so many people who are affected, and that's what really stood out to me, is just choices. You know, we have to make them, and they all have consequences.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't know most of the time you don't know what those consequences are going to be.
Exactly. Exactly.
But you know, you're an adult. You can't run away from the choices. You just gotta hope for the best.
Yeah. You got to do it. You got to move forward, step through it. And
What stood out most for me was self-medicating, and not just meaning that someone was feeling a certain way and then they used a substance to counter that feeling, like Fergus, like Claire, but I saw it as also there are social self-soothing behaviors, like Roger, in terms of feeling needed, wanting to feel needed, and therefore taking on, you know, the sort of the protective role for and I forgot, I don't know why I'm blanking on her
Amy
name.
McCollum.
Yes.
Yeah.
Amy. And then I mean, there were just other examples, but mainly what it was is just people taking on something to feed some part of them that was lacking, or that they felt was missing, some void that was there, or something that was created and to make it go away. So it was either they were running towards something they needed or running away from something they were trying to avoid. But it seemed like there was a theme with that all along, except for Jamie. He seemed to be the one constant that wasn't running away or running to. He was just there.
Interesting.
Oh
That's
my
why he's
gosh,
king of
don't
men.
tell them that.
Oh God. Oh Lord.
That's a good point, Kathy. I
That's
like
a
that
very
one.
good point. I like that one.
I love you. It was fun.
I love you.
I'm so glad
I'm
I
gone
was
because
able
I've
to
got
this
an
time.
Yeah,
appointment.
it's late there.
I gotta
But
do
I got
I
to
was
bed.
so
I
good
haven't
to
had
see
my
you,
supper,
Kathy.
so I'm hungry.
Me too, either. And two.
Oh, excuse me.
Okay.
right.
Love you guys.
Bye-bye.
So
Bye.
is everyone
Take
in?
care.
Is everyone in for Scotland?
Oh yeah.
I am.
For the 2023, yeah.
With
Raise,
bells
I
on.
am.
raise your hand if you're going.
With bells on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bye, ladies.
Anyway,
I'm
bye.
headed
Goodbye.
out.
Love you all. Love
See
you all.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Stay
Love
safe.
ya.
Be well.
Okay.
Bye, bad girl.